Hey party people, and welcome back to MVM. My name is Jeremy and I'm here with Travis Chance and I'm here with Mike Mihealsick. They are the designers of Forsaken by GameTrace. This is on Kickstarter, coming up on Kickstarter. Well, you'd be on the page right now and looking on this video, or you're just a subscriber. Please like and subscribe, by the way. Let's get that out of the way. But here I'm here to ask questions that I have because I've played the game once. I played it at Gen Con. I have feedback then and I have feedback now that I want them to answer. So you get an idea of maybe what you want from this game as you look at the Kickstarter page. Hopefully I get to the things that you want. But I'm going to start with those layup questions so they can sell their game. You have Travis. Travis, can you just tell us what's going on narratively in this game? Kind of the concept of the game?
Everything.
Ooh, everything. Yes, tell me everything.
It's a science, so it's set in a kind of a sci-fi world, sci-fi Western world. The concept is that there is this planet Theria and its two moons, and it was a resource-rich planet, and the galactic government, the Imperiad, said, hey, let's convince a bunch of people to move out to this planet, and we're going to set up colonies, and then we're going to mine the resources there, right? This place is super, super far away, so not anywhere you can get to with notions of conventional space travel. And so they go there, they mine all the resources, and one day the colonists look up and they're out. They just left. And so they're stuck there. And so they have been forsaken.
Yeah.
Right?
Ooh.
Do you like that? Boom, boom, boom.
Okay.
And so the idea is that your characters who have come to this place at great cost, a great distance, for some specific reason that is tied to your character's primary motivations in the game. And it's, the planets are controlled by very different factions. They've got their own ecologies, and their worlds. They're very lived-in worlds, very fleshed-out worlds, and that is the kind of backdrop of this game. Anything goes science fiction, really.
So I know there's narrative in this game. So thematically, can you just tell us a little bit more of what this game is talking about narratively that kind of sticks with that theme?
In terms of the narrative of the game, each individual character has their story and the worlds have their story, right? So the idea is that you're going to be pursuing a line of play with your character. So for example, the character that's in front of me is Salsirium Quell, and he's effectively like kind of a reality TV star that's coming here to film in this like Bear Grylls or something. Like he's coming to film in the toughest backdrop to prove that even though he's a celebrity, he's actually got the right stuff. So he'll have that story where he's going to be pursuing filming the show, where he's got like meddling producers and he's got like a crew and they're trying to figure out how they want to pivot within the story. The other character that's in front of Mike is kind of like a Pinocchio story style robot that has been given access to his administrative features, and he's come here because there's a rumor that another pod, that's what we call robots in the game, has found a way to successfully kind of unshackle all of its core programming. And he's trying to find that so that he can do the same thing, so that he can become an individual. He can become a person who's making his own choices and his own decisions and living the type of life that he wants to live. But the worlds are all going to be kind of bumping up against that, right? Yeah. There's things like weather could happen. The factions could invite you to partake in something. You might make enemies. You might bump into beasties and have to get into a fight. There's the sense of consequences and rewards, and there's so many stories within each of those little encounter decks.
Now, I had my little story when I played. It was about this little robot. Okay, so there's like this in my story. Yeah, after hours, folks. After a couple drinks here, pretty much crazy. So there's like this little robot I made friends with. The cards have like decisions on them and things like that.
The buddy
you
pod.
Bump into a buddy pod or whatever. And he was like, "Hey, I'm your friend." And he's like, "Hey, come see my friends." Turns on the lights. There's a whole bunch of them, like Toy Story style, like right. And they're like, "Hey, you're our friend," like that kind of thing. And they go out. And it comes back and it's kind of like resolved.
He asked you if you would be so kind as to help wake up all of his brothers and sisters so they could be friends too.
And they have, when they came back, they had human faces on there or something. Maybe they wanted to look like me or something like that. But I just found that narratively, this is, it's pretty heavy on the theme. You're also trying to tell stories, like big stories, through the gameplay. Yeah. But I'll get into that with a little bit more with Mike. So, Mike, what's going on in this game mechanically? What are we physically doing in the game? Like actions, on the board. What's going on?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a sandbox game at its core, right? Yeah. The idea is that we want to really give players the tools and the power and the reason to kind of explore this world and do whatever they want. As far as on your turn to turn, you just have 3 actions. You're going to use this to move around, interact with the features in the map that are near you. It's really just like a skeleton system. And if you want, you can learn this game in about 2 or 3 minutes, as long as you don't need to know what everything does. You can
I did not learn it in 2 or 3 minutes.
Exactly.
I learned it in about 20, 30 minutes, but that's fine.
Yeah,
all right, that's
exactly.
fine. I'm not sure if that's true. The first time you learn this game, it's going to take a while.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say in other gameplay, you would
Yeah.
probably get it down to a good 5 minutes
For
or
sure.
so if you know what you're doing.
And that's the difference, is that that if you don't need the strategic context, if you don't want to make like super informed decisions, you can just kind of go and just skin your knees, right?
Yeah.
And like you don't really need to know all the effect stuff. You can just learn it in 2 minutes. But
Right.
if you want to have full information, start playing smart from the first turn, which you should.
Yeah.
Then you have a much longer teach, right? And that's the whole thing, is that there's a lot of width here.
Yeah.
You can move around the board. You can interact with these different locations. You can kind of gather resources and build your personal kit, so you can sort of improve your capabilities, upgrade new skills, upgrade new weapons. So a lot of different things going on.
So let's just go into some of the actual mechanics going on. Generally, you can move around the board, right? So this is our different board. These are like 3 planets, right? 3 different planets, right? And then we're moving around this board, and just what's happened at some of these locations, because this game sort of has a Western Legends feel. Would you say?
Yeah, it's a I mean, this is a sandbox game in the vein of a game like Western Legends, as opposed to other sandbox games that are more kind of pick up and deliver.
So I knew you were going to say something like that. I'm going to say this right now. Hold on. Let's go there. Okay. So some of you probably own like Sleeping Gods. You may own Western Legends already. He's tied to Western Legends. What makes your game just different than that? What's the adventure in this game versus like the sandboxy adventure in that game?
So I think
Those games.
This game has 2 elements that make it unique and stand out in that category. So Western Legends, which I used to work at Colossal Games,
like in common, but also what's
different? Western Legends is more of kind of almost like a summer popcorn movies type vibe. You sit down, you play, you're going to beat up each other. There's lots of decisions, but you get dealt cards randomly from a single deck. This, you start with a hand of cards, you purchase cards, and you craft. So mechanically, I feel like this game, you've got a lot of agency and it's got a lot of depth. There's lines of play. Your character is an internal system that is like a little combo loop, if you will, and the game throws a lot of stuff at you, so a lot of opportunities, and you can kind of tailor how you want your character to play in a very, very like broad sense. There's lots of things that you can do. Narratively, I think this game is really where the difference lies. Is a lot of games want to be storytelling games, but they don't go as far as I think some have. But this game has gone really far. This has got a lot of reading, and it's about an hour per player. This isn't a time investment. This isn't a game like Western Legends. You play it in 6 players in 90 minutes. This is, you're gonna play with 3-4 players. You're gonna be there. That's gonna be your evening playing this game, right? And there's gonna be a lot of reading, but that expense of time and commitment, there's a great reward for that. So like you're saying, like the example you gave of the buddy pods keep showing up. They're like a recurring story throughout your experience.
I thought that was pretty cool, because one of the things that happens in this game is some of the stories that are from these different planets, they have their own stories and situations that happen on their planet. But there are cards that go from here to there. And then there's this deck over here that has these. So cards are exchanging, stories are happening. People are thematically running to other planets, or like they're moving about in a sense like that. It feels like that.
Yeah, there's stories for everything. I mean, like right in front of you, there's a little bounty. This is just a thing that you can fight that sits on the board. That's a bad guy. That it would be in the best interest of everyone to get rid of. If you wait too long, this guy will escape, and when he escapes, something's going to happen, and it's going to happen to everybody.
This one is one of those things that I wasn't necessarily feeling. I don't know what this.
That's because Crystal was too busy killing.
Yeah, I know she was,
out.
but at the same time, there's not enough. I felt like there was some kind of not enough story tied to this part right here. Like the boss. If there is a boss in the game, you will want to defeat the final boss. Not because it's getting stronger, and it is a threat, but everything seems so narrative. And then this is not.
So this is a pinata, right? Yeah. This thing it sits here, and then encounters will happen, and it'll tick up, and the rewards will get better. And if you wait too long, not only does it go away, but it'll usually do something that kind of impugns the characters for allowing this guy to be bad for so long. So is this extremely narratively deep? No. It's got a paragraph and then something happens. But the point is this is just a target of opportunity, one of many within the game, and even it has narrative context to it, right? Where some games might just go, oh, this thing is worth some stuff, and then if it goes away, it goes away. This, you stop and you actually read a story that's involved, right? And some of them have crazy outcomes. Like there's some that have hilarious outcomes.
You had to make some pretty dark choices in this game. It's not on the light end, okay?
Well, but there are. I will say, with regard to that, had I just been, if I didn't have Mike, like Mike found ways to, like this is Mike's creation right here. It's a hopeful story. I would say that character is the most human character of all the characters, and he's not a human. And there's hilarious things that crop up in the game. The buddy pods thing is kind of creepy, but there's other moments that are super funny. Like one of the we just are working on a thing where this guy comes up to you and is like, hey. I want to shrink myself down and hide in your body, and I want you to sneak me into this facility, and then I'll come out. Okay, and if you can just do that. Like, I'm going to pay you, it's going to be an awesome reward.
Where are you going to hide in my body?
He's going to shrink down in like a little capsule, and he's going to infiltrate a facility by being tiny. So
he does not tell you specifically.
Yeah, he'll tell you specifically.
All right.
Yeah, but it's weird, right? Like, that's like a weird, silly, funny, kind of strange moment. And this game has lots of that. There's also like crazy dark moments. There's like this character, there's an opportunity for this character where he meets this kind of cult of people, and he's like this kind of goat man, and he has a long tail. And they're like, if you cut your tail off, something really cool is going to happen. And you can make that decision if you want to, right?
All right, so let's go ahead and just get into some more mechanical stuff here. So what about so we have some thematic things that are going on here, but just maybe tell us like character development wise, what's going on in this board, because this board is full of stuff. It's kind of like overwhelming at first.
Game trays element.
Like, and I don't know what's what, right? If I'm looking at this and somebody's about to explain this game to me, they're like, whoa. They got life here, they got track here, there's slots that go in here. Can you just take us on a tour? And I should say this up front before we kind of get into that. Character stuff. There's replayability built into this part.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so just kind of maybe I'll start with the character and then the character board a little bit. Because I just want people to get an idea of like, what are we doing here? This is all kinds of stuff.
Because there's a lot, right?
Yeah, there's a lot.
You get like this whole placemat of stuff in front of you, right? And this is kind of one of my favorite things about working with game trays is that like game trays do such a good job of organizing and kind of presenting the game space that like we can use that extra bit to kind of be like, here's a little bit more.
I can agree. It looks like madness at first, but then it all makes sense. Like it all makes sense, that kind of thing. So yeah, just give us a little bit of stuff. What's up?
So yeah, you have your personal character and your character storyline. You choose the character at the beginning of each session, and then you plug in your story module, right? Your character is always going to start off in the same chapter 1 of their story. And then, depending on the decisions that you make within your story, you can branch in different directions. So every character is kind of replayable on their own, and you'll get these different objectives from your feat deck that's kind of tailored to that story. But once you've played through that, like obviously you've read all those stories, right? That happens. You can actually unplug this entirely, and the game comes with a handful of kind of character agnostic story modules as well, called the class system.
Okay.
So you might, instead of being like on Mandarax's story, you'll still be Mandarax. You'll still have that kind of background, but now you're going to be an agent for Sanction, and you'll be on this different story path, right? Okay. And that agent of Sanction, that'll work with any of the character kits. Okay. So you can play any of the character kits many different ways, and each of those modules has its own branching path that you can explore differently, even within the same character's play.
Can you tell me a little bit more like about the bottom slots? Because that part right there, I'm assuming. I don't remember. I really don't remember. I'm trying to I was like. I don't remember. What are those slots for? What are they for?
For sure, yeah.
I mean, they're for the faction, bounty things. But tell us about it though. That's important.
Yeah, I mean, everything on the board has its own little place, and there's this little slot. So hopefully once it's all set up, it'll be really intuitive. But as you do work for the factions on this world, now we mentioned that governmental body, it kind of just split, and there's been different factions that are sort of filling the power vacuum, and your relationship with those factions, it matters a lot.
Yeah. So these are this boards out here, right here. Yeah, factions. So there's different factions in the game. You're going to get jobs sort of for them,
exactly.
Right? Okay.
So if you connect with the factions, you can take on different jobs for them, and completing those gives you a lot of different rewards, including like special powerful gear and upgrades and stuff. Whatever faction you take that job from, you always draw from the same job deck. You'll just tuck that in to that slot, and then that'll tell you you're on the hook to do that job for that faction, and when you complete it, you'll get rewards kind of accordingly.
All right.
So that's
Yeah. So these factions, they change. This is like a deck.
Yeah.
So there's going to be different ones for different games. So that's like
right,
more replayability in there.
Right,
I
yeah.
like that. And at some point, man, you got to get down. This dice combat thing. Okay, so I mean, honestly, this is old school. One of my favorite games is Shogun. If you watch one of the top 50 there, and when you're chucking these dice, whether you're fighting somebody from this deck here, you're going to be rolling this dice. Now, I'm kind of indifferent on this. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little indifferent on the way this one is applied, but. Just tell us a little bit about how this thing is resolved. You want to tell us a little bit how these?
Yeah, sure.
In regular combat, let's just say.
So the dice it's a tiered tray, and so the different levels, the different tiers denote the amount of strength that you will get, as well as the damage that you will deal or that will be dealt to you. The dice are 6-sided dice, but 4 of the sides are blank, and then 2 of the sides have this critical result.
Yeah.
So in this example here, if you rolled, let's just say this was a fight, the blue player would have 1, 2, 3, 4 strength, and he would be dealing 1, 2 damage. The white dice would be 1, 2, 3, and would be dealing 2 damage.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like when I look at that, I'm like the pace of the game gets kind of weird, but and the visual design. I know you were changing some of this stuff. By the way, of course, prototype form. But some of these things, the feedback that I had on is how do we evaluate these things? I feel like that's one point. I don't know that kind of thing like that. So that's why I'm a little bit indifferent. I think you should explain this too. These little pieces here that are under. Just because people know what it is.
It's adjustable. So effectively, you can use an Allen key, an Allen wrench, and you can adjust the dice velocity. So for example, if you found that the dice were going down too easily into this lower tier, which is the best tier in terms of for fighting, you can adjust that so that doesn't happen. We kind of want the average to be that they land in here.
Okay.
You get some that land in here, and sometimes they land in here too. So there's there's a physics element to this. There's not a lot of re-rolling effects in this game. We have things called shift where you can move dice down. You can move other people's dice.
What's luck mitigation?
You can flip dice,
luck.
things like that.
Yeah.
Those are the effects that we use. So the thing that's cool about the game is you look at dice, but we have these gear cards. So like everybody starts with this card called Omni Kit, and Omni Kit just says before you roll dice, roll 1 extra die. Yeah. So you can hedge very easily in fights. When you buy weapons, you'll get modifications. Your weapon will tell you how many dice you roll, and you can improve on your weapons.
Yeah, I thought this was cool. So I'm just cutting you off here. Like when you get these weapons, you can kind of like put them on here and like add stuff. I thought that was a really cool little extra.
Yeah. So when you buy new weapons, when you buy in a lot of games, like you can only have like an active weapon, or you'll have like one for each hand or something. In this game, when you buy a weapon, you can take your old weapon, you can flip it around, and you can turn it into something. So you can actually like tailor your weapon so that it's good at, it has its active ability, and then it gets really good at doing something else. Like maybe you want to deal a lot of damage, because that's another thing that I think is cool in is on our system is the strength denotes if you win the fight.
Yeah.
The damage denotes if you overwhelm.
Right.
So if you're fighting an NPC, there's an overwhelm value, which is like you proc an extra bonus. So it's like winning on 2 levels, but you have to be able to win the fight first to be able to overwhelm.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna take you out here to the planets. All right. So now we're out here, sandbox game. All right. So just kind of give me a little snippets of like, hey, what's the cool? Actually, you know what? What's the coolest place in this game to go? So you're traveling around this board. You got different things you can pick up. You take your moves and your actions. You stop at a spot. You activate something from that deck. I got that. That's really all the things you need from this point. Now just give me some of the cool parts that you would visit in this game.
Yeah, for sure. So like I think that the coolest thing for me whenever I play is like the experience of like earning upgrades and just like developing my character. Okay. And the road to do that is to kind of start at the scrapyard, which is like there's just all this junk on this planet. You're just like digging for salvage, and we use the tower for that kind of resolution system as well. Yeah. So if you're at one of these locations that has a scrap token, you can activate that, and that's with the normal interact action there. This little token will move to the one scrapyard location that does not have one. So there are 3 tokens among the 4 places.
So things move around.
Right. Okay, so you just can't use that location again immediately, right?
So are you going to change the graphics design of this, by the way? Because this is like it's kind of a mess. Like it's kind of a mess right now. Okay. Right. Go ahead,
for
keep going.
Yeah, the graphic design, we've gotten a lot of really good feedback, including from you on the board. So we definitely know our path to the next version of this.
Okay.
So
We're a big fan of circles.
yeah.
So can you do Western legendy things in this game? So I'm assuming like there's places where you can bad people. Can you fight people like bounties and stuff like that, or like you can go somewhere?
The player-to-player conflict is much lower in this. I mean, Western Legends is kind of like, imagine like you walk out your door to go to work and like an NFL linebacker tackles you the moment you open the door. That's how Western Legends feels, because there's always an incentive to attack people. You can steal their stuff. Right. You can knock them down a peg. You can, if they're wanted, you'll stop them from gaining points. In this game, there is no, out of the gate, there's not a high incentive. But what we have is we have these cards called Infamy.
That's what I was going to say. I had a moment in my game where I had to, like, this person was getting so infamous and they were getting like more abilities. I had to chase. We both had to actively chase this person down and be like, they cannot take over because they have all this infamy. I think they got a bonus because of that.
Well, how the infamy works is infamy is when you have an infamy. All the infamy means, if you have 1 or 2 or something like that, is if someone comes and fights you, they will gain legend points, which will give them powers and victory points if they beat a player with legend, and then that player or with infamy, and then they reduce their infamy to 1. If you get to your infamy cap at 4 and you start to gain infamy in excess of that, then you start to gain legend. So you effectively start to become a target, right? You're becoming a known person in this world, and it behooves the other players to go, and then there are cards, as you said, that might go, like there's a card called Molecule Mask, and the Molecule Mask says gain an infamy, complete a job without completing its requirements. You just do this. So, but if you ever have 3 infamy, people start to pick up on the fact that this dude's walking around pretending to be people. So, and then the card kills itself, right? So infamy is like this really, it's one of many like textured elements of the game where it kind of doesn't seem like it's a big deal, and then suddenly you look over and you're like, Mandarex has 4 infamy, and if I beat him, I'll gain 4 on here, which I'll gain 2 points.
Like, that's what happened.
And he has a card that he's using that's abusing infamy, so we need to go and beat him up now. So there's not a lot of PvP in this game, but when there is PvP, it's super meaningful instead, right?
Yeah. That's one of the things I really love is that like in a vacuum, like when you start the game, there's no incentive. Like you don't really care all that much about the other players, but the context for that develops as you make choices in the story. Most of that infamy is coming from choices you make in encounters. If you steal stuff, if you do bad things or whatever, then you start to accumulate that infamy over time, and then that's when you become the target, right? And there could be other stories that emerge from these little encounter decks too.
And just to be clear, that isn't to say the game lacks player interaction.
Yeah.
It doesn't. There's a lot of it lacks negative, like highly negative player interaction.
Yes.
So, for example, maybe you have a goal and it's like you have a feat card and it's like you need to have 2 weapon upgrades to do it. I'm gonna go buy those weapons, and my character's gonna get better, and it's gonna make now you're gonna have to work a little harder. Or maybe you're gonna go talk to this persona and you want to go get a job with them. I'll go talk to them, and then they're gonna move away, and now you're gonna have to work a little harder. So there's a lot of these kind of like little bumping and
people
elbowing
driving
moments.
it in game. You don't want them to do it.
Exactly.
You kind of get the things from the deck. That happened to us in our game. So I'm gonna give it to you, Mike, on this one. There's a big narrative book in this game. Like we don't have it. I don't know why we didn't put it out here, but there's a gigantic narrative book on there. Just not only does that play out through the cards, but it does through the end game too. And I wanted to kind of touch on that because I thought it was really, really kind of slick. Tell us like how the game ends. You're going to get points. I know that there's a point threshold, but tell us how the end game works. So it's like they know how strong this narrative part. I want to emphasize that because that's the kind of stuff I like. If you watch my top 10, like I love Euros, I love the Euro games, but I love strong narrative in games.
Right.
So tell me how you really sell it at the end.
Yeah, so I mean the core of this game it's a story game, right? This is very, very narrative driven. Like we want every element of this game. There's nothing in this game that the narrative doesn't touch on at all, right? When you get to the finale, all of these different like layered narrative threads that you've been kind of building the framework for throughout the game, whether it's your personal storyline, whether it's like the bigger sort of more branching cascading story effects from the encounter deck, some of those will reach their kind of their finales, right? And And as you get those finale effects, once you reach the end of the game, you can, if you want to, and I find that most players do, you just go to the back of the encounter guide, you look through this list and be like, oh, this happened in this game. We have this card here, so we're going to read this finale entry.
Right, yeah.
And there's a whole part of the book that's just dedicated to the finale. So that just shows you, like, it just, at the end of the game, whoever wins, whoever loses, doesn't matter. At the end of the game, this is what happens on this planet.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes you might only have like 1 or 2 entries. If you haven't done anything cool the whole game, it'll just be like, nothing cool happens, right?
Well, that's okay.
And that's the occasional, that sometimes happens. But, you know, if you have a character that completes their personal storyline, for example, then you get to read what happens over the next 10 or 50 or 100 years. You know?
That's kind of the thing that was missing for me in a game like Western Legends, but I'm not going to touch on that right now. What we're going to do is move into
Why are you looking at me like it's my fault?
I know. Now we're going to move into one of my favorite things. Of course, you know me for solo play. So just kind of somebody give me a little bit of concept of the difference or the feel of the gameplay in solo mode.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So like when we made the solo mode for this, we wanted to make sure that we were simulating the impact that the other players have on the game.
Yeah.
And one of those things is like just the different touches, like what Travis was talking about, like making sure that these things move around, making sure that the game continues to feel alive.
To live. Yeah.
Right. We want to make sure that the market is flushing out. We want to make sure that they're, you know, the bounty tracker's moving. So like make sure that like those effects, the purely mechanical stuff is being simulated. So there's a solo deck that does that.
Okay.
But there's also like whenever I make a solo mode, I really want to make it feel like a one-player co-op, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And like for me, the best co-op games aren't just do this thing that you're doing in the game, right? There's also like there's this extra layer of urgency.
Yeah.
So the solo mode adds in a different way that like you can lose the game.
Okay.
So you have to like not only balance your personal pursuit of your storyline, your personal objectives, that sort of thing, but you also have to avoid losing.
Okay.
So it feels very much like a single player co-op.
So you get past like a threshold, but you also have some things that are going on there. Yeah, that's all I need to hear on that one. All right. So, leaving a lasting impression, what do you really want people to come away with this game? Like, what do you want people to know about this game? It is going to be a very expensive game. I cannot tell anybody what to do with their money, but I want you to just give us, like, this is why you want to check out this game.
I think there are two kind of factors to that.
Oh my God,
right?
two? No.
Two. So the first one is like, you know, why we decided to do this with Game Trays is Game Trays has been instrumental in 170 plus, projects making other games look cool.
Yeah.
So we flipped it. Let's make a game around what Game Trays can do, right?
Yeah.
So there's this beyond, there's little things like, look, the little planet here flips up and it becomes the lid, right? And then you can just tuck that right in the box. So
quality of life stuff.
Sure, when you play, you can just pull this out of the box and it's going to be ready to go. It's not going to be like hey, let's sort through everything for an hour and then we'll be ready to go. So there's that practical element. Then there's elements like this little, rumbling, tumbling dice thing. There's the aesthetic elements like the planet has like elevation levels, which it doesn't affect gameplay. But the main thing is like this game is beautiful. It's unique looking. Like when it's sitting out on the table, it doesn't look like it's not a square board. You can kind of free form. You can, if you want to know what these cards are, I can pick up this tray and hand it to you, and you can go, let me see what my options are when it's not my turn, instead of staring across the table or having to get up or whatever. So we're trying to do something different with that, right? And this isn't just a game. This game's only got 6 miniatures in it. It's not a game that's got like 1 million miniatures. And as you said, it's an expensive game, and that expense comes from the abundance of components. Just a ton of components. But the main thing, I think, the heart and the soul of this game is we want people to say, remember that time when, right?
Okay.
Just like I bumped into you.
And I feel like that, and every time I think of this game, I think of that story, those moments. So I totally feel you on it. Like, the game is memorable.
That's exactly what we want.
The first experience that I seen in this game, I saw that big book. I questioned everything. Why is there a big book here? Is this too much narrative? Are Euro games going to like this? But then I just came away with, this is an experience. It feels like a lived-in experience. And that's what I want in my games. $150, that's your choice, what you want to do with your money on that. But I like...
Not 150.
It's not 150.
Oh, no, I don't know. I don't know how much it is.
It's interesting because like you played a lot of games that have game trays in them, right?
Yeah.
And like we're using the storage you've seen in those games. We're just doubling it up as table presence.
I don't know why I said that number. I have no idea. I just
it's close.
No, it's close. I'm just saying, like I just said that number. All right. Anyway.
But that's that is an element in this industry, right? Like there are games that have tons and tons of bits, and there's games that have slick presentation.
Yeah.
And obviously we're making some choices to include this as could this game have just been some sort of a square board or something?
Yeah.
I don't feel like it would be something different. Like this is a part of it. Like we want there to be like the actual feel of it as you as the person, as the player, and then as your character. So it's meant to be like an experience on lots of levels, right? Like a tactile experience, like a memorable narrative experience.
All right, I'll leave it there. It's not $150. Okay, so anyway, I don't know why I just made that number up, but. Thank you guys for coming up here and explaining this stuff. That's what we wanted to do. We just wanted to have a conversation about the game. I wanted to ask questions, give a little bit of feedback, and hopefully that represents what you were thinking as you look at this video. There are going to be timestamps, so don't worry about it. Find what you need. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. Feel free to like and subscribe. I have to say that. And once again, folks, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us on MVM.
Thanks.